Two guards asked Black Marine to leave his son's graduation. Then 6 SEALs silenced the room. He wore his uniform with pride, polished boots, medals gleaming, spine straight as ever. A Marine who had seen war, earned respect, and returned home to raise a son. But on the day that my son was graduating, none of that seemed to matter. 2 security guards locked eyes with him and began moving. No explanation, no hesitation, just suspicion. In a room full of joy, his presence became a problem. They asked him to step outside. They thought it would end there, quiet, unnoticed. But what they didn't know was who else was watching from the crowd and what those men would do next. What happened that day silenced the room and left a message no one could forget. Master Sergeant Raymond Ellis had spent over 20 years in the U.S. Marine Corps. He'd served across oceans, led soldiers into combat, and lost brothers he still thought about every night. He never asked for recognition. He lived his life by the code. Honor, courage, commitment. But this day meant more than any medal. His son Elijah was graduating from high school, first in the family to do so. Raymond woke early, pressed his dress blues, and made sure every detail was perfect. Not to draw attention, but because he wanted his son to look into the crowd and see the man who taught him discipline, sacrifice, and pride, standing tall, just like always. The gymnasium was full. Families filled the bleachers, teachers lined the stage, and students adjusted their gowns, buzzing with nerves and excitement. Graduation banners hung from the rafters, flashing cameras, laughter, music. Raymond took a seat in the front row. He didn't notice the 2 security guards watching him from across the gym. But they noticed him. They noticed his posture, his uniform, his skin. And while most people saw a proud father, 2 men saw something else, something that didn't belong. They whispered, nodded, and started walking toward him. Raymond sat calmly, hands folded, eyes fixed on the stage. He was ready for one of the proudest moments of his life. But some people still needed proof he deserved to be there. One of the guards leaned down and whispered just loud enough for those around to hear. "Sir, can we speak with you outside?" Raymond turned, a little confused, but calm. "Is there a problem?" "Just need to confirm something." Whispers began. A few heads turned. A woman in the row behind raised her eyebrows. People could feel it, that something wasn't right. Still, Raymond stood, quietly, respectfully. Outside, the guards pulled him aside near the gym doors. "We've had a report about someone impersonating military personnel," one of them said. "You understand? We have to be cautious." Raymond blinked. "I'm not impersonating anything. I served 22 years. This uniform is mine. We just need to see some ID." It wasn't a request. Raymond pulled his military ID from his wallet. They studied it, whispered again, still unconvinced. Inside, Elijah's name was getting closer to the program. His father wasn't in his seat. Raymond's hands clenched behind his back. Not in anger, but in restraint. He had dealt with harder men in darker places. But this was different. This was supposed to be his moment, his son's moment, and yet, again, he was being told he didn't belong. What the guards didn't realize was that Raymond wasn't the only military man in the audience. Spread throughout the gym, 6 other men, plain clothes, quiet observers, had taken notice. They weren't just guests. They were Navy SEALs, retired, brothers from a life Raymond once lived. And they'd seen enough. One by one, they stood up. People noticed. An energy shift rippled through the crowd. The SEALs walked out of the gym and approached the scene. Their steps were slow, deliberate, controlled. One of them spoke. "This man is a Marine, he's a brother. You're making a mistake." Another added, "He's not just a guest, he's a father, and he belongs here more than most." The guards faltered. Their authority, once absolute, began to crumble under the weight of the moment. Students were now watching through the glass doors. A teacher peeked out. Phones started recording. Raymond remained silent. He didn't have to speak anymore. His presence, and the ones who stood beside him, said everything. The tension outside was electric, like the air before a storm. For a few moments, no one moved. The security guard stood frozen, caught between protocol and reality, unsure of their next step. One of the SEALs pulled out his own credentials. "You're questioning a decorated Marine at his son's graduation," he said. "You've already made a mistake. Don't make it worse." Inside the gym, Elijah's name was about to be called. The principal stalled. Whispers filled the rows. Where was his father? Raymond, still calm, nodded slightly to the SEALs. Not a signal of aggression, just brotherhood, understanding, unity. The guards, sensing the crowd, the cameras, the tide turning, stepped back. One muttered, "You're free to go." The SEALs flanked Raymond as he walked back inside, not to intimidate, but to honor. The gym fell silent. People stood. No announcement, no fanfare. Just the quiet rise of hundreds to their feet as one man returned to his seat, escorted by those who knew what it meant to wear the uniform, to sacrifice, to serve. The principal called the next name, Elijah Ellis, and in that instant, a son saw his father, back where he belonged. They locked eyes, and in that silence, more was said than any words could carry. After the ceremony, people came up to Raymond, some apologizing, others thanking him, but mostly they asked, why? Why would this happen to someone like him? Raymond didn't answer with anger. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "This isn't new." And he was right. Even in moments of celebration, even dressed in symbols of service, black men are still questioned, still doubted, still told in subtle and not so subtle ways that they don't belong. But that day, 6 men reminded the room and the world that silence is not strength. That's when you stand by and watch injustice, you're part of the problem. They didn't raise fists. They didn't shout. They simply stood. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. Elijah would later say it was the proudest moment of his life. Not because he got a diploma, but because the man who raised him refused to be pushed aside. Because when the world tried to erase his father, 6 men said, "Not today." Raymond didn't need an apology. He didn't need recognition. He just needed to be seen for who he was, for what he'd given, for the son he came to celebrate. So the next time you see someone standing alone against something that isn't right, ask yourself, will you walk past, or will you be one of the 6?